Prepare yourselves for a battle of epic proportions between two titans. Feast upon their voices and revel in their words. This is Dueling Ogres.
Hello, Ogres, and welcome to episode 110. 110. 110. 11. Oh. 11-0.
That's the face you're putting forward, huh?
Thank you for joining us as always on this Comicos Tuesday evening. Earth date April 11th, 2017. I'm your host, Remington Hitchcock, and with me as always is my co-host, Peaches McCream. Hello, Peaches.
What do you know about the teaches of Peaches?
I love it even more. Oh, that's good. So we are talking about comic stuff this episode. That's why I did Comicos.
Comicos. Is that a word?
It's instead of comatose, it's Comicos.
Okay.
That was kind of what I was going for there because I'm not very good at jokes.
So the idea is that we're putting people into a coma with comic talk?
Yes.
Again, I question the foot you're putting forward for this podcast.
Well, I don't have feet, Brandon, and I really wish you would find a different turn of phrase.
I question the rotten stump you put forward for this podcast.
You almost got a spit take out of me.
Almost.
Mm-hmm.
Someday. So if you were to lose your foot, inevitably,
yeah,
would you go with like the sort of metallic bent springy foot, or would you go peg leg? Because I can say, me personally, I would go peg leg for sure.
Is it because you're cheap?
Partially.
Yeah.
But also the peg leg's a classic look, right?
Sure, yeah. Your quality of life would be terrible if you had a peg leg.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it would.
Like you have this hard piece of wood butting up against a stump and balancing on a very small center of gravity.
Well, and more than anything else, you couldn't walk on open grates.
No, you couldn't.
And you know how much time I spend at chemical research facilities.
Yes. With the job at NASA, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, this is unrelated.
Oh, okay.
This is hobby time.
In your spare time, you take tours of chemical facilities?
Tours, yeah, sort of.
Gotcha. Quote unquote tours.
I'm trying to make a Joker.
Yeah.
I've shoved a lot of people into vats of chemicals.
Oh, that's good times. I mean, I want to say peg leg. I know I'd regret it. I'm too heavy for a peg leg, but
you just get it reinforced. Do like what, oak, maple,
just a strong mahogany, perhaps. Yeah, very beautiful.
See, I think I would go
with
Japanese cherry wood.
Yeah,
it would be tasteful.
Yeah, it'd be, and you'd smell like cherry wood all the time.
But at the same time, I mean, you see like those videos where soldiers, for example, have lost their leg, like from the knee down or whatever.
Right.
They get those like sweet looking metal legs with the bouncy things on it where they can just run.
Lieutenant Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dan just had an arm grafted onto his leg.
I think you're thinking of Alternate World Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
It's an alternate title.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest
Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Mom always said
it wasn't Lieutenant Dan.
Chocolate's like a box of life.
It was Sergeant Dan.
No, he was a lieutenant.
No, in Gorp.
Gorp. There's an M in there.
Gorp.
Forrest Gump.
And Sergeant Dan. And instead of shrimp, Bubba Light.
What's the opposite of shrimp?
Cheeseburgers.
Perfect.
It has nothing to do with me being hungry.
There's so many ways you can cook a cheeseburger.
With bacon, without bacon, with lettuce, without lettuce, with pickles, without pickles.
Yeah, he's just as grating in this opposite dimension too.
Yeah. I mean, there are very few changes in the actual presentation of the characters.
Yeah, this new dimension did not make him any more palatable.
No, not at all. So what have you been up to in your game playing world since life is boring?
I've been playing a lot of stuff. honestly.
Really? Have you departed from Far Cry, or are you still primarily playing Far Cry?
I haven't really been playing my Xbox a lot. I had a sound bar on my TV. I got my TV, and within like 2 months, my speakers just were dead on my TV. Everything sounds super crackly and awful.
That would be... I mean, did you listen to it blaring?
No, not at all. I think it just came... I think they were just bad, honestly.
You know, they probably would have worked under manufacturer's warranty, but anyway.
And it would have. When I got my TV, I got a Blu-ray player with a surround sound system at the same time.
Yeah.
So I used the surround sound system and didn't worry about it. Surround sound system eventually went bad. I got a sound bar. I went cheap on it because sound bars are expensive. So
Yeah.
I spent like $30 on a sound bar from Big Lots.
Sure.
And that lasted me for about a year, but it finally died.
Ah,
So I haven't really been playing the Xbox much because I need sound on stuff.
gotcha.
So
what have you
I've been playing a mobile game
Okay.
called Plague Inc.
Plague Inc.
That's
Okay.
been around for quite a while now, a few years at least. It's pretty fun. I mean, it's real simple. It's a map of the world. You create the name of a plague. You start out, you have to kill everybody as a bacteria, and then you unlock viruses, and you go. But you pick the starting country you want your plague to begin in. And then as you get points, as more people become infected, you sort of mutate how the plague is passed, like symptoms, transmission, abilities of it, and stuff like that,
Okay.
with the ultimate goal of wiping out humanity.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty fun. It's been kind of a time waster.
Resident Stoner John turned me on to the Guild of Dungeoneering.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that one at all?
No.
It's this adorable little game, and it has a hand-drawn, like, pencil style to it.
It's a
been
mobile game?
Yeah, you can get it on mobile. In fact, you can get it on mobile for like $4, and it has 2 expansions with it.
Okay.
But you have an adventurer, you have a guild, and the point is to grow the guild, and you do these little quests with an adventurer. Yep, that's it right there.
Oh, okay.
And you do these little quests with your adventurer, and you level up the guild basically. And your adventurer dies, and there's this little graveyard that you can make, and it's super adorable and pretty funny and pretty addictive at the same time.
What's the gameplay like? Because it looks like it's card-based from what I'm seeing on the Play Store.
Yeah, it's card/turn based. You start off with, depending on what kind of gear you have outfitted your guild with, you start off with like 3 cards that you draw, and then you go up against it. There's 2 different systems. You have the dungeon system, because you go into an encounter, a quest, and you go into a dungeon and you have to meet certain criteria in the dungeon. But you get to build the dungeon yourself, sort of. So like it has little squares that you can go to,
Okay.
but you can also place squares yourself. So say you always start off at level 1 as soon as you enter the dungeon. So say you have a level 5 bad guy that you have to fight. You have to build the dungeon in such a way and place monsters yourself in order to build up your level enough to face the level 5 bad guy. It's
Okay.
really neat. It's a really, really cool game. You should download that and play that.
Actually, I just bought it, so I'm downloading it right now.
There you
I'll
go.
check it out.
Fantastic.
You convinced me.
Good. I think you'll really enjoy it, and then we can talk about it more.
If I don't like it, you owe me $5.99.
I
I owe you $5, so you owe me 99 cents.
Okay. I'll just apply that to the podcast budget.
Just take it out and trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I do owe you quite a bit of money.
So I've been kind of dabbling in that. I've been catching up on Hearthstone. Ungoro Crater just released this past week, which is the new set expansion. It's not a storyline expansion, it's a set expansion.
Okay.
So that has been a true headache.
Why? Just trying
because
to slog through it?
The set itself is very married to itself. Like there's a lot of synergy between the cards in this set, and it plays so well together that if you don't have a lot of those cards to start your own synergy, it's really hard to beat these decks.
Yeah.
Like even just starter decks, you can slap cards together and make a ballin' deck that
Did you say a ballin'
I just said
deck?
it's ballin'. It's straight ballin', yo.
Okay. I think that's literally the first time I've ever heard you use the word ballin'.
Word. So it's the first few games that I played, I got very, very frustrated and wanted to explode my computer.
Well, in game theory, Mark Rosewater, the head designer of Magic the Gathering right now, I read his game theory articles, and that's one of the things he talks about with certain sets that they've made that have failed, and something they try to stay away from is parasitic mechanics.
Yeah.
Meaning that the mechanics work well within themselves, but they don't really lend themselves to a whole lot of play outside of that certain set.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things he points to is like, can be a set killer because you want every new set you release to have applications in older sets as well.
Well, the interesting thing that Blizzard did to kind of combat that is that when they released this Unguro set, they started backtracking on some of the older cards that didn't have like a character type. So Elemental is a big card type, monster type in this set, Elemental and Beast.
So
they went back and they relabeled a few people Elementals that weren't originally labeled as an Elemental.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, they have the ability to kind of retcon cards, which is really cool. But still, when all of these other cards are just way OP compared to these last sets, it's still a rough transition.
Yeah, it's funny to watch Hearthstone grow in such a similar way to Magic.
Yeah.
Because Magic did that, I don't know when it was, late 90s, early 2000s, whenever it was. They called it the New World Order.
Yeah.
Where they went back to old cards and change the creature type on them as well.
Right. And I figure that's a whole lot harder to do in a physical game.
Yeah.
Just kind of re-releasing cards in a new fashion.
Well, a lot of the older cards, they don't even re-release. So the card itself might say creature type abomination.
Yeah.
But then when you go to the official Wizard site to look it up, it's changed from creature abomination to like creature type horror or creature type horror elemental, stuff like that.
Gotcha. So you just kind of have to know what the, what is that called when they do that? Errata.
Yes.
Yes. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, you have to be aware of it if you're playing in any sort of like official capacity.
Right, sure. So that's what I had been doing in my gaming time. Other than that, it's just work, work, work.
Much like Rihanna. All you do is work, 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 work.
No, nothing like Rihanna.
No, you're nothing like Rihanna.
I'm nothing like Rihanna.
See, I think you're exactly everything like Rihanna. You hold a special place in my heart. Your music lights up my life.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You had something else there that was apparently incredibly inappropriate.
Yes. But why am I trying to keep it appropriate, Remington?
Why? Because we have a special guest today.
We do.
We have a special guest today named Jordan Lowe.
Mm-hmm.
He owns his own comic book shop, and we're going to talk about some comic stuff.
Yep. If you listen to last week's episode, we discussed a little bit of some stuff with Marvel and some announcements they've made about diversity and waning sales and etc. So we decided to bring Jordan on to discuss it and get his perspective as a comic shop owner.
Right.
Which was especially hard for me because, as I've said, he is one part of the Ka-Pow Pop Culture podcast, which is our podcast nemesis.
Right. Yes. They are the yin to our yang. They're the
Reed Richards to our Dr. Doom.
There you go. Making a comic reference. I like it. Very good.
Just easing it in slow. The references.
Yeah. They are the mayonnaise to our peanut butter.
Yeah, I've had mayonnaise and peanut butter sandwiches before, and they're actually not bad.
Yeah, they really aren't. I like Miracle Whip better. I digress. So we'll recap all of that again because this is the after the interview recording that we're doing, pulling back the curtain like I always do.
Yeah.
Just because we said all of this a lot already. So
yeah.
Here's the interview.
Do it.
So last week, Brandon, we talked a little bit about just the debacle that was Marvel, that Marvel exec.
The weird diversity comment.
The weird diversity comment, yeah. And then the state of comics in general and paper comics. So we decided that we'd bring Jordan on, our resident comic guru, as it were, and owner of Asylum Comics in Marietta, to expound upon that, see what he had to say, and we actually got him on. So, hi, Jordan.
Hey, how we doing?
Not too bad.
You shined the signal into the sky, and I appeared.
Yes, I did.
What would your signal be? Like, Batman obviously has a bat signal. What would your signal be?
Oh, my. A pair of glasses, probably.
I mean, was that an expensive thing to put together?
Well, yeah, it's the taxpayers' expense.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. Wait, taxpayers are paying for.
Oh, the taxpayers would pay for the bat signal for sure.
Are you? Yeah, but he's a vigilante.
Yeah, you think Gordon is pulling out from his own bank account to pay for the bat signal and the upkeep?
You
No.
think that Bruce would pay for it himself? He is a billionaire.
No, I think it's folded into the budget for the police department.
Yeah, that's my favorite issue, that where they have that whole procedural meeting about budgetary.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense now. I'm glad you. I was wondering what that scene was all about, but yeah. So, like I said, Jordan owns Asylum Comics in Marietta, Ohio. And how long has the store been at? We'll just do a little brief. Tell us about yourself. How long you've been open? How long you've been doing what you've been doing?
We opened in 2005, so this fall will be our 12th anniversary.
Wow, very nice. And you were.
I should have a little caveat. Any opinion here? We're a very small store in a rural area, so your mileage may vary at bigger city locations or different things. But I can just tell you about my experience here.
Right, sure. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. What was your take on the Marvel executive coming out and saying, "Oh, diversity seems to be what the retailers are telling us is that the diversity in the comics is not what the people wanted."
Well, it's an argument that's been going on a while. No one's put it quite that bluntly, I don't think, which is what got him into trouble.
Yeah,
because he was in a room full of retailers. There was this Diamond Retailer Summit. So those are usually unfriendly audiences anyway, because Diamond doesn't have the best reputation as far as customer service and things. So these guys go out there and, there's this room full of surly retailers wanting to know why things aren't better. So you think they would be, very defensive and choose their words carefully, and this guy just didn't. He just kind of put his foot in his mouth. So I'm not sure. But yeah, these are the kind of conversations people have been having fan-wise and, retailer to retailer for a while, because Marvel sales have been slumping. You can't debate it. Just the cold hard numbers show that.
right.
And it just happens to coincide with this big push for diversity. And you hate to blame that, but, sometimes the suit's in charge. Everything's very simple. Like, causation, A leads to B. That must be the reason.
Right.
Hard to say.
So on a personal opinion, do you think it's the diversity that's pushing people away, or do you think that it's subpar writing?
I think it's the way it's been implemented, because, they've been doing it. Jim Rhodes took over for Iron Man in the 80s.
Right.
They've been doing things like that forever, and no one had a huge problem with it. And they've introduced, Ms. Marvel several years ago, the young Muslim character, to, critical acclaim. She's a wonderful new character. And no one said, "Oh, you're taking away from the other Ms. Marvel." Like, no one was that worked up in arms about it.
Yeah.
But here, over the course of just a couple months, they basically replaced every hero in the stable with a new character who is either female or a minority.
Right.
And to just do it on that wholesale scale that way has really kind of rubbed people the wrong way, especially when it's their heroes, the ones they grew up with, their Wolverine, their Steve Rogers, their Bruce Banner. People take this very seriously and have these characters very near and dear to their heart. So, yeah, it's hard to replace it. Look, we've got these better versions.
Right.
Well, the instinct is always going to be like, no, they suck. And if you add in this weird racial element that makes everyone uncomfortable, that there are people who, like you said in your last episode, screw those guys, who cares what the racists think? But there's something in there that people don't want to maybe seem racist. So, I don't want to say I don't like the character because I'll sound kind of racist, but...
Yeah.
It's a minefield of talking about this. I mean, I feel like even as the three of us talking about it, there's certain things that we sort of have to feel like, at least for me personally, we kind of got to tiptoe around, because you don't want to seem like you have an issue with Riri Williams just because she's a young black girl, as opposed to the writing just isn't super great for Iron Man.
Yeah. To me, so few of them are compelling. Like when Ms. Marvel came to the forefront, Kamala Khan, her story was really compelling.
Yeah.
It was written by a Muslim American young female writer and kind of shepherded by a young Muslim female editor. And these two people had very distinct takes on what America is right now.
Yeah.
And they used her character in this kind of Peter Parker role as, back in high school. She's just learning the ropes. She's idolizing these other characters. And the stories were excellent. There was a reason for her to be there and for, to weave her in through Avenger stories and things. And some of these other ones, it's just like, well, we got to kill off Bruce Banner, so, make Amadeus Cho the Hulk.
Right.
No one really wants him to be the Hulk. Well, but he's the Hulk. You'll love him.
And do you think, since you deal with a lot of longtime fans of specific characters at your store, would it make a difference if Bruce Banner's killed off, Amadeus Cho becomes the new Hulk, if they just handled it better, if it was written more compellingly, that fans of the original Hulk would get on board? Or do you think there's a large subset that would just say, Bruce Banner's dead, I'm not interested, no matter what?
Yeah, that's a tough call, because the way deaths are handled now in comics, most people are just like, well, I guess I'll just stick on it till Bruce comes back. Like, no one's looking at it as a permanent change, which is another thing that Gabriel said at the meeting was, oh, these characters are here to stay. We're not, we're bringing the classics back at some point, but, these are all going to be here. So eventually we're going to get to that point where there's, 6 or 8 Hulks running around, and there's multiple Thors and multiple Wolverines, and I don't think people like that very much.
Yeah. Well, they brought Old Man Logan is in the regular Marvel universe now, isn't he?
Yeah. Yep.
So you mentioned that there's not really arguing in that Marvel sales seem to be slowing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard?
Yeah,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they, even some of the flagship books that sold, no comics sell like they did in the 90s, hundreds of thousands of copies, but we're into like under 10,000 on a bunch of books. And
holy crap.
It's very noticeable.
Wow. That's an insane drop. I mean, does that have to do with, in part, the digital comics as well? Or do you think that there's just been this shift to where, I mean, we have so many different ways to get media now. We've got movies and video games, and I mean, it's so much more prevalent than it was even in the 90s. Do you think that has a lot to do with it? I guess we'll move into that. We'll do a really smooth transition into how physical books are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how smooth it is if you point it out.
But shut up.
Sure.
So, I mean...
obviously the digital versions are having an impact, but no companies release sales data or download data.
Yeah.
So no one really knows how many are being sold. Everyone's really tight-lipped about it. I don't think anyone wants the competition to know, exactly how many eyes are on these things. Surely that has an impact, especially with these new younger readers they're looking to hook in. It's much easier to start a new reader off reading digitally than to convert someone who's been reading for 40 years. And hey, put away your dusty old boxes, just download it now. It's a much more difficult change for us old-timers.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, we still have a lot of older comic readers out there. I mean, do you think that has any kind of impact on the digital versus the physical? Do you think that impact is really starting to show now that, I mean, because digital comics have been on the rise for the past, 4 or 5 years now?
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's more, with the iPad or bigger screens coming out where you can read them and you don't have to sit at a desktop or a laptop. You can take them with you. It just, the ease of use has, I'm sure, definitely helped. Again, I don't like digital comics, just not because I sell normal comics, but if I want to sit down and read, I want to read a physical book, and I spend all day looking at a screen, working on things. So reading for pleasure, I don't usually like looking at screens, but I've had other people tell me completely differently, and other people completely agree. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't even know. I've never looked into, what kind of business, Kindle does for Amazon or, vice versa.
Right.
Are those sales hurting, Amazon's physical sales? It's not really something I've ever looked into.
If you were to speculate, do you think that they're being so tight-lipped about it because it's not as prevalent as they had initially hoped it would be?
That was always my guess, that if they were selling, 1 million downloads, like they would be trumpeting that pretty big.
Yeah.
So, the quieter they are, the less impact it seems to be making.
Gotcha. That's kind of what my take on it would be too. See, I just recently listened to my first audiobook, and I got started on a second one, and I haven't picked it back up yet. But it was definitely a different experience, and it even took a little time to get into. When it comes to listening to it. Of course, comics, you still want to look at it and read it because there's the art to enjoy and all of that. And I've looked at digital comics. We had a brief, what's the Marvel app? Is it Marvel Unlimited or
Marvel Unlimited, Marvel Now? No, not Marvel Now. I don't know.
Whatever the Marvel app was that you could download the comics onto. We had like 2 months subscription on that. We had like a month free, and then we paid for a month as well. I read through a Guardians of the Galaxy story arc, and then I think
you read the Death of Logan, I think.
Yeah, I think I read the Death of Logan as well, just because it's one of those things that I had never got the chance to look at.
That's when I think the revolution's really going to happen, is when these companies figure out more of a subscription model, like a Netflix model, where you just pay for access and can read whatever.
Yeah.
Because right now, downloading a digital comic costs just about as much as a print comic.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes no sense.
Right.
But these companies, to their credit, I guess, have tried to appease retailers because, when these first came out, retailers, how dare you sell these digital comics?
Yeah.
And instead of saying, it's our business, we're going to sell how we can to who we can, they were like, well, retailers are important partners to us, and we have to try. So they have bent over backwards and actually hurt their own businesses trying to keep retailers from getting mad at them, which never works. We're always mad about something. But.
Would you say in the deal between retailers and a bigger publishing company like Marvel or DC, who would you say has the upper hand really? Like, I know that it's sort of a symbiotic relationship between the two of you, but would you say retailers banded together have more power, or do the publishing companies hold more power? Because at this point they could say, you know what, we're just going to go all digital.
No, they obviously, it's their toys we're playing with. They can do whatever they want with them, and everything they sell us. Not to get too nuts and bolts about it, but all the risk is on me. I place orders 2 months in advance, and they're all non-returnable. So before Marvel ever goes to print, they know exactly how many copies need printed to sell to the retailers. So they don't print, a 10 million print run and then, oh no, we can't sell them. They sell exactly how many they need to sell. We are stuck with them, and if they don't sell on my shelf, I can't return them. So basically, the risk is all on my shoulders to make sure these things are a hit and aren't, gathering dust on the shelves.
Yeah.
So I guess this is off topic from the diversity discussion, but now I'm kind of
we've moved on to past that. I think we said what we needed to say on it. So
okay, because my interest is piqued. How do you decide what it is you want to order? Like, I mean, I assume that you're ordering the big flagship titles every month, no matter what, the stuff that sells. But like, how do you decide sort of the secondary comics and the new comics that you pick up?
Yeah, that's actually the hardest part of the job. Because in the old days, Marvel would only publish 24 titles, and it was easy. You carried all Marvel's books. It was no problem. But now they're putting out so many, they have mini-series and reprints of older stuff that you have to look at it closer, especially when sales aren't good, that, do you physically have space for this stuff you're buying? Because when a new title comes out, you got to take something old off the shelf.
Right.
So you have to make sure you have the actual physical space for it and some kind of demand. So instead of, I wasn't open in the 80s heyday or whatever, but, instead of buying 50 copies of X-Men and 50 copies of Spider-Man, now I'm buying, maybe a dozen Spider-Man, 4 or 5 Spider-Man 2099, 4 or 5 Miles Morales Spider-Man, 2 or 3 Spider-Woman, 5 or 6 Spider-Gwen. It's this long tail theory for economics where, if there's a bell curve, the most popular stuff is in the middle, selling the most.
Yeah.
Well, they have, they've gone way further up the x-axis And we're now buying, maybe the same quantity of books, but it's dozens and dozens more titles.
Yeah.
So it's effectively more of a gamble then, right?
Yeah, every month is guessing, well, I think people are going to still want this. And then that's the trouble with all the rebooting. I know how many copies of Batman to sell.
Right.
I have a pretty good handle on that after all these years. But when you reboot, Iron Fist for the 5th time, okay, well, there's a new Netflix show on. There should be a bigger audience, but people were only buying X amount from the last series. So will that translate to more sales, higher sales? Do the people on their pull lists want to keep it, or are they going to drop it? So yeah, every new number 1 issue takes 5 or 6 months to gauge where the sales are going to be. And if I guess too low, I'm out sales.
Yeah.
Because I've sold out. Or if I guess too high, they're sitting here wasting space and took up, capital I could be using elsewhere. So yeah, I know people grumble about the reboots, but that's the biggest headache in my job is, figuring out basically from scratch every couple months, how many of these are people going to want?
Do you think that the amount of different titles that they release, like you said, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2099, Amazing Spider-Man, do you think this is good for not just retailers, but comic readers in general to have more diversity as far as just the amount of books you can get? Or do you think overall it's hurting?
I think to a degree it helps, but once you go past some tipping point, it's just too much. Like, it's nice to have options, because not everyone's going to want to read the mainstream, normal meat and potatoes title. There are people who are going to want the more oddball B-list characters and things like that, or a different take on characters, because there's only so many things you can do with Peter Parker.
Yeah.
You can't be too humorous about it or too off the wall, or you can take chances in some of these ancillary books. But yeah, and that's all. So you get some of your best books that way with these C and D list characters no one's really paying attention to.
Right.
Well, like I know the Hawkeye run was pretty acclaimed.
Oh, yeah, very much. And they basically just let them do whatever they wanted, because who cared about Hawkeye at that point?
Right.
And is that what all of the reboots are kind of feeding into? Like, are the reboots there really to just say, okay, we're shaking things up, let's bring in new readers. Let's bring back readers we lost with our old story.
That used to be, because they thought they could, we got a good idea now, or a new creative team. Let's shake things up and show people we're serious about this new direction with a new number 1, and then that'll bump sales. And then there was all this talk about the TV model and just do seasons. This is volume whatever of this book. This season's going to last for 12 issues, and then we'll reboot it with a number 1 next time.
Right.
And they haven't really committed to that fully, so they're trying to have it both ways. They have, these soft reboots every couple months on some titles and sticking around longer on others. They haven't quite found the right formula.
Yeah.
Does this translate for both Marvel and DC? Like, is DC doing the same sort of things as far as how they're releasing issues and the way they're numbering them and stuff?
DC, when they do it big time. They did, the New 52
Right.
was probably the start of this. Universe is changing, for this generation. And they weren't kidding around. Detective and action comics that have been around since the 30s. They renumbered it number 1. They're saying this is a brand new ground floor.
Yeah.
And that's kind of and they introduced, they turned Wally West into an African-American kid, and they introduced many of the new characters who came in. They made sure they were more diverse background.
Yeah.
So this probably all started with the New 52. And then people were grumbling because, the comics they've read for 50 years, well, what's the continuity? Is it still, did it still really happen, or is it, do these stories not exist anymore? And so the grumbling started right from the beginning. But New 52 worked. It actually brought in lots of new readers. It got people excited. Sales were huge for the first several months for that. But they just couldn't sustain it because they'd messed up the continuity so much. They didn't know what their history was, and they kept, the titles kept contradicting each other, and it was just a big mess.
So as far as the diversity goes, DC handled it, I would say, better than Marvel in that the overall characters were the same, but they just changed the race or ethnicity or what have you.
But DC's had more history with that from, Green Lanterns.
Yeah, that's
there's been
true.
7,000 Green Lanterns. There's been multiple, all these characters. Marvel's usually tried to keep their history a little more streamlined. DC just kind of throws people out there. It's all about the legacy characters for them. So
Yeah.
it wasn't quite as big a shakeup. They did the DCU, YOU, where that was the... you might need to Google that because it's... I can't even remember the book titles that came out. They did Prez, like the teenage girl president.
Okay.
They did...
That sounds amazing.
Bizarro. They did a weird comedy with Bizarro on a road trip. They're like, let's have a bunch of female characters and young characters and kind of alternative characters that we don't normally use, and people will love them. And the sales were awful on them.
I searched DCU, and the first thing that pops up is 10 worst titles of DC's New 52. So DCU apparently was not well loved.
Yeah, that was pretty much from the get-go, pretty much dead on arrival.
Damian, son of Batman.
Damian Wayne is still around. Like, Damian Wayne has been around for a while, hasn't he?
Yeah.
See, I'm not versed.
So,
Remington and I aren't huge comic readers. When I do read comics, I'm a total Marvel fanboy, so I'm not super up on DC stuff that much.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to be a whole lot bigger into it, but
Then we just got bitter and
we got bitter and old, had bills to pay.
we hate fun.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
So who would you think?
Says the guy who owns a comic shop.
Okay, so how do you think, Jordan, do you notice a big difference between Marvel sales versus DC sales? And like, I know, like you said at the beginning, this is a cross section of a comic book shop in a smaller town. We're not a huge urban area or anything, but you're still seeing a cross section of America, I suppose, in what you're selling. And Marvel and DC versus indie comics.
They're called the big two for a reason, because Marvel and DC are probably 80% or more of the comic industry. So, there has been a push. People, screw Marvel, screw DC, let's go all indie. Stores shouldn't even sell that corporate nonsense. But you have to sell the big, you can't run a store that's just indie stuff unless you are, downtown San Francisco or some mecca of independent thinking.
Yeah.
Comic stores and the industry, we're all floating on the backs of Marvel and DC. So a healthy Marvel and DC mean a healthy everyone else. But this should be the time these indie companies jump in and say, look, people are getting annoyed with this. They're struggling with these characters. Maybe we can loose their grip on these characters they've been reading for 30 years and get them to try something new. So, companies like Image and Dark Horse and IDW and Boom, this is a golden opportunity for them to put out, some great independent stuff and maybe change a few minds and, sway people to the more indie side of the aisle.
Do they seem to be faring well? Like the more indie publishers, do they seem to be, obviously they're not overtaking Marvel or DC, like you said, 80%, but do they seem to be holding steady in that other 20%? Or has it been a pretty hard sell to bring in people to indie comics from what you've seen?
Image especially has been doing great. They launched in the 90s basically as a clone of Marvel. All the old Marvel artists left, Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, and they did a bunch of characters that kind of looked like the guys they were drawing in Marvel.
They
Right.
had what, X-Force? Was that Image?
They were that was his book at Marvel, and then they went to Image and made Youngblood.
Okay,
Team of
yeah.
young heroes, yeah.
I watched,
So,
there's a
and
video, this is off topic for just a second, but there's a video you can search on YouTube. It's a VHS home video that Stan Lee did. He had a show where he would have up and coming comic book artists on and have them and interview them and have them draw. So this is from, it's got to be like 92, 93. And he has Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld on. And he gives them 30 minutes to design a character. So it's them drawing and designing a character, and he's standing above them, and he's like, we're going to name him this. You should draw him like this. But he just
Just
halfway
standing there waiting to take credit for it.
Yeah, he makes jokes about it. But like 3/4 of the way through, he just starts making fun of them so hard. He's like, you got to put any more pouches on that guy? Like, it becomes so weirdly passive aggressive. But anyway, I'm sorry to get off topic, but that makes me think of that with Todd McFarlane and that whole generation of 90s artists and sort of what I feel like they did to the comic industry and the oversaturation of dudes with giant muscles and guns with 12 barrels.
Right. So that's what Image kind of began life as. And now, especially with the success of The Walking Dead, they've made Robert Kirkman one of the, executives at Image.
Right.
It was just the 7 founders, and they've invited Kirkman in as, hey, you've been doing very well. So Image is now known as this indie place where they do horror, sci-fi, romance, crime. They do every kind of genre, and it's all creator-owned. And there have been some huge, massive breakout hits from Image in the last few years. So they are definitely the number 3 publisher.
And you are working on a book yourself, right?
I am. I'm the number 4 publisher.
It's Bluff Creek, right?
Yeah. My newest one through So Pro Comics. It's called Bluff Creek. I'm a huge Bigfoot fan and always have been. Growing up, read all the books and watched Unsolved Mysteries and all that fun stuff. So I got kind of annoyed that anytime Bigfoot's in pop culture, it's either comedic or it's a horror movie, one of those Sci-Fi Channel movies where Lance Henriksen has to track him through the woods and fight him.
Right.
So I wanted to do a story from the Bigfoot perspective, where Bigfoot is the main character. So we're basically following a young Sasquatch and all the adventures he gets into as he grows up.
So you're the writer on it?
Yeah, I'm the writer, and the artist is Ansley McDaniel from Kentucky.
Are you working on issue 1, or has issue 1 already come out, or where are you as far as progress?
Yeah, issue 1 is out, and we're almost sold out of the first print run. And issue 2 is just about ready to go to the printer.
Oh, wow, okay. And then you've done comics for quite a while, right? I know you mentioned off air that your first one was Paradox City, which I remember seeing years ago, picking it up at local cons.
Yeah, my friend Michael K. Easton, my co-host on the podcast, he's the artist and I'm the writer, and we've done quite a lot of stuff, web comics and print comics. And started with Paradox City, kind of a superhero story set in a city. We wanted to do like an anthology series just set in one city with no main character. And then we morphed that into Short Pants Romance. It was basically a comedic take on things, like that if Adam West and Burt Ward were the huge TV stars that they were in our reality, but they were actually superheroes. We follow the kid as he grows up. What does child fame do to someone actually a superhero? So it's basically following Robin now that he's almost 30 and washed up and has this embarrassing past.
So do you go through a distributor for yours?
No, it's just all indie. Just print on demand, kind of our earliest days, and take them to Comic-Con, sell them online, actually hand sell them to shops around the area. So we've never had any kind of distribution.
Okay, but you have through a website listeners could go to if they wanted to check it out.
Yeah.
What would that be?
The current one would be soprocomics.us.
soprocomics.us. Okay.
SOPRO?
Yes.
SoPro.
So then since we're talking about the creation of comics, let's go ahead and lead into the next story. And circling back to Marvel, Marvel has not had a very good week when it comes to PR. There was a Marvel artist who secretly coded, quote, anti-Christian and anti-Jewish messages into the X-Men Gold comic. It was a Muslim artist, and I think it goes a little far to say that it was anti-Christian and anti-Jewish, but it was an Indonesian artist, Ardian Syaf. I don't know if that's how you actually say it, but I've got a couple pictures here. This is from dailymail.co.uk and the initial story that I found here, but they also link a bleedingcool.com article as well. So what all did you hear about this, Jordan?
Well, I read the book the day it came out and obviously didn't notice anything. Right. I did, seeing Colossus with a T-shirt with huge numbers and letters on it, I did think, what is that supposed to mean? I didn't know, it was obviously it meant something or was a reference to something, but my mind didn't jump right there. Right. So then the next day you see hate speech in Marvel Comics. I'm like, oh no, what now?
Right.
Like that seems a little bit misleading. Like you said, I'm not sure if it's anti-Christian or is it Islamic. I don't know what the fine line is there, but media headlines seem to be a little bit jumping the gun to this guy hates Christians and this guy hates Jews.
Oh yeah,
where he has been speaking to the media and trying to explain his side of things. I don't know that he's really doing a good job because he's not said anything that really clears him. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's just a big mess, especially for one of their big relaunch books, kind of a marquee title.
He seems like he's been kind of just drug into the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about it. I think what you guys were saying, don't really know enough about it to know exactly what he was saying. But it seems like he's not really been given a fair chance to explain what it is.
I think that really what it boils down to is we have this very clickbaity society where, just because it happens to be something that doesn't step in line with whatever BS America happens to be on the fence about, that it's automatically anti-Christian or anti-Jewish. And from what he actually says about this is that it was kind of a nod to a protest against a governor of Jakarta who happens to be Christian, and he was quoting something from the Quran that he kind of misquoted or something like that, and it caused an uproar in the Muslim community. So he was putting this nod to that protest into the book, I guess, just as a way to show his support of the uproar.
Yeah,
is what I gathered from it.
I mean, didn't he literally just write the word Jew above Kitty Pryde's head, though?
Not really, because it's part of the word jewelry.
Yeah, but I mean, I think blocking it in such a way that it clearly is.
I think that is conjecture more than anything else.
I mean, he drew the picture. He placed where her head was. It's not like she happened to just walk into the frame, Remington.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're going to take his explanation at face value.
Oh, no, I'm taking it at face value. I'm just saying that he laid it out. He knew where he was putting stuff. He probably misunderstood or I'm sure he's being slightly misrepresented. Plus, he didn't realize how much backlash something like this would get for what he thought was probably a little inside thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the word Jew is pretty big above Kitty Pryde's head. Regardless of what the point is, that's a little yikes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little sympathy for the guy because he's just trying to express his politics, but there's a time and a place, and your first issue of X-Men is not that time or place.
Right. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And we've talked to Terry Irvin, our illustrious Viscount, off the book at it. He's the one who actually shared the story over to us. And I thought it'd be a good one to throw into this as well. But that seems to be the consensus, is that, there's just a time and a place to spout your politics. And doing a move like this is more exploitative of your position to do that. Would you agree?
Yeah, comics have always been political, and there's this really recent push to keep your PC beliefs out of my comics. But comics, since Captain America punched Hitler 70 years ago, comics have always been political. There's always some undercurrent of something, and especially to be relevant at all, comics need to be political.
Yeah.
But this is beyond. This isn't being political. It's just sort of. It is just pushing an agenda.
Well, I mean,
again, I read the thing and I never saw it, so he didn't push anything on me. I don't know.
It's nothing you would notice unless you were aware of exactly what he was referencing.
Yeah.
But I mean, weren't the X-Men even sort of allegorical to the civil rights movement?
Oh, yeah. Any kind of outcast group, the civil rights struggle or the gay rights struggle, it's always been a metaphor for that.
Yeah. I think where he crossed the line in regard to that is just so how surreptitiously he did it. It wasn't part of the story. That there was no continuing to use the X-Men as an example, since they were an allegory of the struggle of minorities and racial tension and stuff like that. At least it was apparent that that's what it was, and the story revolved around the struggle of a mutant to be an accepted member of society. This is just a blatant, well, I don't want to say blatant because it wasn't meant to be blatant. He did it surreptitiously. He did it under the radar as far as it goes to, like you said, Brandon, people who knew what he was talking about could get a little chuckle out of it and say, ah, ha, ha, okay, I understand your politics, artist. But otherwise, the problem with doing that nowadays is there's so many people who have access to so much information that you can very easily have what you believe in twisted into something evil or not part of the status quo, that sort of thing.
Well, and speaking to this, Jordan, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, but I feel like comics have had, at least in the past 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer, a pretty big target drawn on them, both for people saying, keep your PC out of my comics, and also for people saying, why can't we have a strong female character who isn't always, why is Wonder Woman always wearing a bikini? I think back to the Spider-Woman cover. I'm sure you remember that whole thing from a few years ago. The Spider-Woman variant cover. The cover recently, within the last year or so, I think it was Batgirl that was aping the Killing Joke, where he's kind of holding her. Comics seem to have more of a spotlight on them as far as what's right and what's wrong than they have in years past, would you say?
And yeah, and to a degree, that's great that there are more eyes on this, and they have to be a little more responsible and think through the things they're presenting and the images that they're putting out into the world. But there's also a line that you cross where you're going to offend someone some point over something.
Right.
That everyone, you can't please everyone, and you can't sanitize everything so that everyone is comfortable with it. And you have to take artistic risks. And, wherever that fine line is, they haven't quite found it yet.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's important to keep those.
It seems like really it's an issue, pun entirely intended, that there's really no, I get it, comic issue,
got it. Yeah.
With really no good way to fix it. Not that it needs fixed, but really any good way to go one way or the other. It just seems like this big maelstrom that until it settles down, people are just kind of flying blind.
I think it's just I think it's this oversensitivity that we've developed.
You have become such a curmudgeonly old man. You're always bitching.
It's so true, though.
You're always complaining,
whining about everything all the time, and I want to whine about the whiners. Is that so bad?
Well, Jordan, before we finish up here, I wanted to ask you, with you running a comic book shop, I imagine when the doors are locked, you're just sitting in just piles of comics, kind of showering them over you, Scrooge McDuck style, right?
Well, of course, yeah. What other perks are there?
Just like osmosis. It's the only real perk. So what have you been reading lately? Is there anything that's stood out to you?
Yeah, there's been some good stuff lately. DC just relaunched the Wildstorm. Speaking of some of these 90s characters, like from the Wildcats and the Authority.
Oh, wow.
They let Warren Ellis kind of reinvent that world as a Black Ops, more realistic sci-fi story. And they brought back some of these characters into a new universe. That's been really good so far. Marvel side of things, I'm enjoying the Thor stuff that Jason Aaron has been doing and his Doctor Strange stuff. Yeah, Jason Aaron's had these long runs on a couple of these characters that he's done some really interesting things with. Probably my favorite indie at the moment, there's a book called Kill or Be Killed by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. And it's this young man starts getting visions that he thinks might be a demon telling him to kill people. And that if he doesn't, the demon's going to kill him. And so he has to decide, am I just crazy, or should I go, am I crazy because I want to kill people, or am I actually possessed because I want to kill people?
Huh. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've actually heard that title before, but I didn't know anything about it. That's cool. So there are Jordan's suggestions then. And Jordan, of course, is also part of the Ka-Pow, the Pop Cultured podcast.
Correct.
Where can they find that, Jordan?
We are on Twitter at the Ka-Pow Podcast, on Facebook, or at www.udownwithkpp.com.
I love the way how all of you say that. You guys have that down pat. You down with KPP.
Yeah, you gotta have a little swagger when you say it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It comes naturally too.
I actually have swagger dripping through my headphones I'm using to listen to you right now. That's how much there was.
Also, shout out to your shop. Where can they find your shop?
Yeah, Asylum Comics in downtown Marietta at 212 3rd Street.
And you have your own website for that as well, or?
Facebook page, facebook.com/Asylum Comics.
Gotcha. And finally, plug your books, man. Plug them.
Yeah, Bluff Creek. That issue 2 is coming up very soon. You can find us at soprocomics.us, or we have a Bluff Creek Facebook page, facebook.com/Bluff Creek Comic. And we're just about to release some sneak peek art from the second issue. You'll be able to see a few little things ahead of time.
So go over there and like that page and show some support for Jordan and his artist in Kentucky, whose name I've forgotten at the moment. What was his name again?
Ansley McDaniel. Her name.
Oh,
That's pretty
sorry.
sexist, Remington.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Way to go.
sorry. I don't know anything forever.
In a discussion about diversity, you just hear assuming that the artist is a man.
I am a jerk that way. I'm a curmudgeonly old man. We've established this.
And all of those links will, of course, have links to in the show notes.
Boy, he's making me do a whole lot of work, is he?
And put 3 hyperlinks into it.
That's really difficult.
That you literally will just copy and paste.
Yes.
Look, if you weren't sexist, I would have done it myself.
Yeah, he might put something in the background that you don't even know he put there.
That's true.
Yeah.
I do have complete control over the website, so. All right, Jordan, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm glad that we finally got. This is the first time that we've had another podcaster on our show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. You guys do really great work. I think you're both hilarious, and I enjoyed being on.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I had a good time.
Sure thing.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
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 All right, thanks again, Jordan, for being on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We
It was
had
nice
a lot
to
of
parlay.
It was nice to have an enemy be a friend for a day.
I'm going to keep pushing this nemesis narrative, even though I don't think they're aware of it.
Yeah.
And I like all of them.
Exactly. I mean, Jesse just got a new shirt. You know, we still haven't done shirts, so maybe they can do a shirt where it's like "No to Dueling Ogres" or something like that, and we can just really drive this whole
just a real hate
thing.
campaign.
Yeah, just a hate
started
campaign
against us.
Yeah, any publicity is good publicity, right? I like it.
Wasn't it like a really crappy person who said any publicity is good?
You gonna try that again, Brandon?
No, I think I got it.
Perfect.
One and done, one take full. Wasn't it a really crappy person who said that?
Probably. I have no idea who said it, but
I think it was Hitler.
probably.
No, I think it was like William Randolph Hearst, and he was a pretty crappy guy.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. I don't know from history. So again, thanks, Jordan, for being on. We really appreciate it. We hope to have you or one of the other guys on at some point. Again, when we have a appropriate conversation to entertain in such a fashion. Or if not, if we just want to get on and shoot the poop.
We're just running out of ideas. And
we're just running out of ideas.
Need to pull people on.
Yeah.
It's like when the characters from Family Matters would show up on Full House.
Yeah, there you go.
Like getting into like
crossover.
season 6, season 7.
Yeah. Real cool crossover stuff.
Bunch of Urkel heavy episodes.
Yeah. Pretty terrible.
Yeah.
So when we get terrible, we'll have our enemies on. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Just kidding. Go check out the
nice save, Rem.
Just
kidding.
Just kidding. No, we love all those guys. So go check out all the links will be in the description below. We've covered that already in the interview. And as for our show, if you have any questions or comments, or you'd like to hear yourself on air, you can call us at 978-DU-OGRES. That's 978-386-4737. You can also reach us on Twitter at Dueling Ogres. Email us at duelingogres@gmail.com or leave a comment on the Facebook page. Brandon, did you have shout-outs, or did you close them down like a jerk?
We had one comment this week. It was from the beloved Viscount Terry W. Irvin II,
right?
Who said that we may need to sponsor a GoFundMe campaign for an extension cord purchase for my computer charger.
I agree.
Which I completely agree with. Computer chargers cost about $100,000, so if you guys want to go and start filtering that money my way, I'd love it. He said he was sort of waiting for me to cut out and you to say, well, guess that's it for the episode, and then go into the closing solo, which Terry should be a writer for us because that's gold.
Yeah.
That would have been way better than I think the petering out we did as we typically do.
Right. Well, I think he was saying if your computer died all of a sudden.
No, I know. But that would have been way better regardless.
Do you, Brandon? Do you know?
I do, and I believe it, yes.
Oh, okay.
He also said, on the other hand, maybe the situation is an intentional, subtle podcaster method to keep listeners on edge. The world may never know. Well, Terry, I'll answer that question and more on next week's episode of Dueling Ogres Podcast.
Unless he forgets.
He chose a really horrid picture for the background image on this last episode.
I wanted something pained. So yeah, nobody asks any questions about these. I put a lot of time and effort into picking a picture for these things.
Well, I think because most people are looking at them on mobile, where the picture's so small comparatively. I mean, that's the first time I've seen it that large.
Yeah.
On your background, and that's just a pained elderly woman.
Yeah. She's just screaming out. It's like it's a sculpture or something. But it was the only thing that I could find that seemed appropriate for the pain that I was having in my back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that was all about. Yeah, I'm glad my jokes fall on deaf ears. Make sure to check out our website at duelingogres.com for articles pertaining to some of your favorite geek news. Finally, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or find us on YouTube's, iHeart's, Radios, Satchels, where you can donate to the show, or nearly anywhere else you can find the podcast.
We got a review.
Did we?
Yeah. Diamond Man, Stephen Hines left us a review.
What do you mean?
On one of the places. I don't know. I saw it pop up on Facebook.
Oh, I think he left us a Facebook review.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got a review. So, thumbs up to that, Steven. You now own a third of stock in Dueling Ogres.
Yeah, we're not publicly traded, Brandon, yet.
That's up for negotiation, I guess.
Yes.
You now own a third of the stock of Remington.
Yes.
You own a third of Remington. You get to pick the third. Choose carefully, because each part of that third is pretty terrible in one way or another. There's a lot of good, but there's some booby traps there.
Booty traps.
That's what I said. Booty traps.
He said this podcast never fails to make me laugh and think while geeking out. 2 opposable thumbs up is what he said.
Yes. Continue to stroke us.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be great if it was 1 star, though?
He goes back and he changes it to 1 star. Oh, thanks.
Love the podcast. Hate stars.
Perfect. What video game is that from?
What?
When I think it's a fighting game. Is it Street Fighter? When you have a perfect score, you don't get hit. It's like, you win. Perfect.
I don't know.
I've been doing that a
Street
lot.
Fighter.
I think it's Street Fighter. Anyway, I've been doing it a lot, so...
I know it's not Mortal Kombat.
No, it's
I know
not
it's
Mortal
not Soul Calibur, because Soul Calibur always had that like weird rambling guy at the beginning. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, from the sands of time, the 2 fighters meet in the ring of fortunes.
Yeah. That's true.
And then you ring out the guy.
Soul Calibur. Yeah. So until next week, Ogres, keep your clubs blunt.
And your tusks sharp.
Good night. Really pleasant. Yeah. Good night. What if they listen to it in the morning?
I don't care if Spider-Man's a clone. Stop spending all our cash on back issues of The Flash, or I swear to God you're gonna spend your twilight years alone. You can call them graphic novels. They're still just plain old comic books to me. And I don't see why you must always ceaselessly discuss the post-zero-hour continuity. For the last time, I won't read those Kirby X-Men. You know that I prefer the work he did for DC. And if you don't want to die, you'll lose that old street price guide, comic buyer's guide, and Wizard magazine. But please get the new Invisibles for me.
Jerk.
Chirk.
Jerk.
Chirk runter.
I guess I should pull up a script.
Hello, ogres, and welcome to episode 147 of the Dueling Ogres podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Full, and with me, as always, is Remington. Remington, do that thing you do. Perfect.
Hello, you beautiful bastards.
Hello. Head of marketing at Marvel Rem that said that the kind of waning sales in Marvel Comics was due to people not being ready for diversity. Did you see any of that stuff?
Yeah, I saw all that mess.
Do you have any opinions on that when we get into it?
I'm sure I do, yeah. 'Cause he was at a retailer's meeting. So it was supposed to be basically a room full of retailers. So I'm guessing it was, what said here stays here, and it didn't stay there.
Oh, yeah.
I think that there's going to be at least another day that the box of like scrawled and on the city. Love it.
Was that a customer?
No, the landlord, we were dealing with a leak problem outside, but I think they got it figured out.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you
I'm
need
good
us
to
to
go.
call back later or something, that's fine.
No, I'm good. It's not my problem. I just rent it.
And then we'll plug Ka-Pow, and if you want to plug your comic, you can do that as well. And plug the shop, and
Just plug everything everywhere.
just plug it all. Just
Sounds good.
I don't want to see a single leak.
You guys, totally off topic, but you guys, your podcast is G-rated, right? Or not G-rated, but you guys are family friendly.
We bleep any F-bombs, but we try to keep it, light PG-13.
Okay. I said bitching earlier. That's okay, right? Because, I mean, Remington and I, obviously, this is our podcast and we're explicit, but I'm trying to keep it clean. So if you're putting out there like, hey, I was interviewed on this other podcast, people aren't going to, come to our podcast and suddenly they hear me like, so what are you doing, you big piece of shit? You fucking idiot, Remington.
Nah, it's no problem.
Yeah, don't forget that we're on speakerphone.
Oh, sorry.
He's got like 12 customers that just walked out the door. Good job, Brandon.
Their jaws dropped. Well, if your sexism didn't chase them away, I don't think my F-bombs will.
Valid.
All right, Jordan. Well, we're going to wrap up and do our intro and outro. But thanks again, man, for being on.
Hey, thanks a lot. Anytime.
Cool.
Thanks, man. Bye.
All right, bye.
Okay. Take a break.
I totally forgot it was on speakerphone. That was so great. Customer walks in. Hi, welcome to Asylum. And I'm saying you fucking here, right?
I'm not allowed to say good mythical morning, am I?
Yeah, I think that's skirting it pretty close.
Yeah, that's probably copywritten.
Good folkloric morning.
Oh, there you go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Derivative.
Just different enough to stay out of court.
Dueling Ogres podcast. Just different enough.
I'm just thinking of all the implications of that. Like there are a million geek podcasts out there. We're just different enough.
Yeah, we would need to do like a bunch of headshots, like promotional images of us in different poses for other podcasts with just something slightly tweaked.
Yeah. We'll start off with the Ka-Pow podcast. Instead of Dr. Doom reaching his hand out, it's just your face plastered over it. And it has like 2 fingers downward.
Like badly photoshopped.
Love it. Sold. Let's do it. Oh,
I don't know if we should really try to escalate a one-sided war. They're not aware of this.
Oh.
I come back next week. So, Brandon, what'd you do? It was great. I cut the brakes on all of their tires.
Oh, God. We're done.
Yes.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
We're done. Goodbye.